Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to tell you a truth so uncomfortable that most people spend their entire lives running from it. A truth that separates dreamers from achievers, talkers from builders, and wishful thinkers from those who leave a mark on this world. And here it is. Success does not care how badly you want it. Let that sink in. Success does not care about your intentions. It does not care about your excuses. It does not care how talented you are. It does not care how many motivational videos you've watched, how many books you've purchased, or how many promises you've made to yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning. Success only responds to one thing: who you become. And that's the hard truth nobody wants to hear. Because deep down, most people want success without transformation. They want the reward without the process. The victory without the sacrifice. The confidence without the struggle. The dream without the discipline. But life doesn't work that way. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain. At the top is everything you've ever wanted. The life, the purpose, the freedom, the confidence, the impact, the success. You look up and it seems beautiful. But then you notice something. The path isn't smooth. It's steep. It's rocky. It's lonely. And suddenly, the dream that looked so attractive from a distance begins to look intimidating up close. That's where most people stop. Not because they can't climb, but because they don't like what climbing requires. Think about that. Most people are not defeated by failure. They're defeated by discomfort. They quit when the excitement fades. They quit when nobody applauds. They quit when progress becomes invisible. And that's why average lives are built. Not because average people exist, but because extraordinary people often surrender too early. You see, there is a moment in every journey that nobody talks about. A moment when the vision that once inspired you becomes heavy. A moment when your goals stop feeling exciting and start feeling exhausting. A moment when you begin questioning everything. Is this worth it? Am I good enough? What if I fail? What if all this effort leads nowhere? And that's the moment that defines your future. Not when you're motivated, not when you're inspired, not when everything is working, but when every part of you wants to quit and you choose to continue anyway. Because discipline is not doing what feels good. Discipline is doing what matters when nothing feels good. Let me tell you something most people never realize. Your greatest enemy is rarely another person. It's the version of you that seeks comfort over growth. The version that negotiates with excuses. The version that says, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow. The most dangerous word in the human vocabulary. Entire lives disappear inside that word. Dreams die there. Potential dies there. Opportunities die there. People spend years waiting for the perfect moment. Perfect timing. The perfect confidence. The perfect circumstances. But successful people learn something different. They learn that action creates confidence. Not the other way around. The courage you need is not waiting at the finish line. It's waiting on the path. You discover it by moving. You discover it by trying. You discover it by facing the very thing you're afraid of. Because fear has a strange way of shrinking when you walk toward it. Have you ever noticed that? The monster in your mind is usually much bigger than the reality in front of you. Yet people spend years imprisoned by fears that have never actually happened. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of not being enough. But what if I told you something even more frightening? What if the real tragedy isn't failure? What if the real tragedy is reaching the end of your life and realizing you never discovered who you could have become? Imagine looking back and seeing 1,000 opportunities abandoned, 1,000 risks never taken, 1,000 dreams left untouched. Not because you lacked ability, but because you waited for certainty, and certainty never came. That should scare you. Because regret weighs far more than effort ever will. The pain of discipline lasts for a moment, The pain of regret can last a lifetime. And yet, every day, people choose regret without realizing it. Every day they choose comfort. Every day they choose convenience. Every day they choose temporary pleasure over permanent growth. Then they wonder why their lives stay the same. You cannot build an extraordinary future with ordinary habits. You cannot create greatness while being addicted to comfort. You cannot become powerful while constantly avoiding difficulty. The truth is simple. Everything valuable lives on the other side of resistance. Strength, wisdom, confidence, success, self-respect, especially self-respect. Because self-respect isn't something you buy. It's something you earn. You earn it every time you keep a promise to yourself. You earn it every time you choose discipline over distraction. You earn it every time you stand back up after life knocks you down. And make no mistake, life will knock you down. Again, and again, and again. There will be days when your efforts seem invisible. Days when nobody notices. Days when it feels like the world is moving forward while you're standing still. But appearances can be deceiving. Think about a seed buried underground. For weeks, sometimes months, nothing appears to happen. No visible growth. No visible results. No evidence. Yet beneath the surface, everything is changing. Roots are forming. Strength is developing. Foundations are being built. And one day, what was invisible becomes impossible to ignore. Your growth works the same way. Just because nobody sees your progress doesn't mean progress isn't happening. Just because the results haven't arrived doesn't mean they're not coming. Some of the most important transformations happen in silence. The strongest people are often built in seasons nobody witnesses. The world celebrates the trophy, but it never sees the lonely mornings, the sacrifices, the setbacks, the disappointments, the tears, the doubt, the countless moments when quitting would have been easier. People admire success. Few admire the price. But the price is what creates the success. And here's another hard truth nobody wants to hear. Success often feels boring. Yes, boring. Because greatness isn't built through occasional acts of brilliance. It's built through repeated acts of consistency. The same habits. The same effort. The same commitment. Day after day after day. While everyone else is chasing excitement, successful people are mastering repetition. They understand something powerful. The life you dream about is hidden inside the things you keep avoiding. Think about that. What conversation are you avoiding? What challenge are you avoiding? What responsibility are you avoiding? What version of yourself is waiting on the other side of that avoidance? Because growth rarely feels comfortable. Transformation rarely feels convenient. And becoming who you're meant to be often requires letting go of who you've been. That's painful. It's painful to outgrow old beliefs. Painful to leave familiar environments. Painful to release identities that no longer serve you. But every new chapter demands a goodbye. You cannot carry your old limitations into your future. You cannot become someone new while remaining exactly the same. At some point, you must choose. Stay comfortable or become capable. Stay familiar or become extraordinary. Stay safe or discover your potential. And the choice is yours. Always yours. Not your circumstances. Not your past. Not your critics. Not your failures. Yours. Because responsibility is power. The moment you stop blaming and start owning your life, everything changes. The moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? Your entire perspective shifts. Victims seek reasons. Leaders seek solutions. Victims wait. Leaders act. Victims surrender control. Leaders create possibilities. And inside every human being is the capacity to rise beyond their current reality, including you, especially you. The person listening right now. The person carrying invisible battles. The person fighting silent wars. The person questioning whether they have what it takes. Listen carefully. You do not need to be fearless. You only need to be willing. Willing to take one more step. Willing to try one more time. willing to believe before the evidence appears. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving while fear screams in your ear. And one day, if you keep going, you'll look back and realize something incredible. The obstacles you hated became the lessons you needed. The failures you feared became the wisdom you gained. The struggles you questioned became the strength you carry. And the person you are becoming right now, through every challenge, every setback, every difficult choice, is preparing for opportunities you cannot yet see. So when life gets hard, remember this. The road was never supposed to be easy. The struggle was never a sign to stop. The resistance was never proof that you can't do it. Sometimes resistance is proof that you're finally moving in the right direction. And maybe, just maybe, the breakthrough you've been praying for is not waiting years from now. Maybe it's hidden inside one more day of discipline, one more act of courage, one more decision to keep going when every excuse tells you to stop. Because the hard truth about success that nobody wants to hear is that it demands everything from you before it gives anything back. It asks for faith before proof, effort before reward, commitment before results. And if you're willing to pay that price long enough, one day you'll wake up and realize that the person staring back at you in the mirror is no longer the person who once doubted themselves. They are stronger, wiser, more resilient, more disciplined, and they understand something most people never will. That success was never really about reaching the destination. It was about becoming the kind of person capable of carrying the destination when it finally day arrived. And when that moment comes, when the world finally sees the victory, they won't understand the nights you spent questioning yourself, the battles you fought in silence, the moments you almost gave up but didn't, because what they see is the result, while what truly mattered was the transformation that happened in the darkness, when nobody was watching and you kept moving forward despite every reason to stop. Because there comes a point in life when the battle is no longer between you and the world. It becomes a battle between two futures. One future is built by default. The other is built by decision. The first future asks nothing from you. No risk, no growth, no uncomfortable conversations, no difficult choices. You simply drift. You wake up, you repeat, you survive. Years pass, and one day you look around and realize your life has been designed by whatever demanded your attention instead of what deserved your intention. The second future is different. It requires awareness. It requires sacrifice. It requires the courage to look honestly at yourself, not the version you show the world, the real version, the one that appears when nobody is watching, the one that knows exactly where you're playing small, the one that knows which excuses are genuine and which ones are disguises. Because here's something powerful. You can lie to other people. You can convince friends. You can impress strangers. You can create an image. But deep inside, there is a place where the truth always lives. And that truth follows you everywhere. It sits with you when you're alone. It whispers to you when the room is quiet. It reminds you of the promises you've abandoned, the standards you've lowered, the dreams you've postponed. And the longer you ignore that voice, the louder it becomes. Not because it wants to punish you, because it wants to wake you up. Have you ever noticed how dissatisfaction often appears in people who seem to have everything? The job, the money, the status, the recognition. Yet something still feels missing. Why? Because achievement and alignment are not the same thing. You can spend years climbing a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. You can win battles that never deserved your energy. You can collect rewards that never fulfill your spirit. That is why success without purpose feels empty, and purpose without action remains a fantasy. The real challenge is creating a life where what you do and who you are begin to move in the same direction. That takes honesty, a level of honesty that most people avoid, because honesty forces difficult questions. What if your limitations are outdated? What if the story you've been telling yourself for years is no longer true? What if the person you believe you are is only a fraction of who you could become? Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. For years, you drag it everywhere. Eventually, the weight feels normal. You forget what lightness feels like. Then one day, someone asks, "Why are you carrying all those stones?" And you answer, "Because I've always carried them." The stone of past mistakes, the stone of rejection, the stone of failure, the stone of disappointment, the stone of someone else's opinion. Most people aren't exhausted because life is hard. They're exhausted because they're carrying weights they were never meant to keep. You were never meant to carry every criticism. You were never meant to carry every failure forever. You were never meant to carry every painful chapter into every new season. At some point, strength is not found in holding on. It's found in letting go. Letting go of resentment. Letting go of self-doubt. Letting go of identities built during your weakest moments. Because if you define yourself by your worst day, you deny yourself the opportunity to create your best one. Think about that. A single failure does not define you. A single mistake does not define you. A single setback does not define you. Yet so many people build permanent identities around temporary experiences. They fail once and call themselves failures. They get rejected once and call themselves unworthy. They struggle once and convince themselves they're incapable. But life doesn't work that way. A chapter is not the whole book. A storm is not the whole climate. A moment is not the whole story. And the story is still being written, right now. In this very moment. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Now. Every thought you choose. Every action you take. Every standard you accept. Every decision you make. You are writing the next page. And here's what most people don't understand. Destiny rarely arrives as a dramatic event. It arrives disguised as ordinary days. The days when nobody is cheering. The days when motivation disappears. The days when the work feels repetitive. Those days matter more than the extraordinary ones. Because character is not built in rare moments. Character is revealed by what you repeatedly do when nothing special is happening. Anyone can be committed when they're inspired. Anyone can be focused when they're excited. Anyone can be positive when they're winning. But who are you when the excitement fades? Who are you when progress slows? Who are you when nobody notices your effort? That version of you determines everything. The future listens carefully to your habits, not your intentions. Read that again in your mind. The future listens carefully to your habits, not your intentions. Because life eventually multiplies whatever you practice. Practice excuses and excuses become your identity. Practice discipline and discipline becomes your power. Practice courage and courage becomes your nature. Practice growth and growth becomes your reality. And slowly, almost invisibly, you become someone different. Not through one giant decision, but through thousands of small ones. A choice to keep your word. A choice to stay focused. A choice to remain patient. A choice to continue learning. A choice to keep showing up. Most transformations are too slow to notice while they're happening. That's why people quit. They mistake slow progress for no progress. But the greatest forces in life are often invisible. The roots beneath a forest. The current beneath an ocean. The belief beneath achievement. The mindset beneath success. And while the world is obsessed with visible results, the wise learn to master invisible foundations. Because every skyscraper you admire stands on a foundation you never see. Every champion you admire has disciplines you never witness. Every successful person you admire has private standards that created public results. The public sees the harvest. The private life produced the seed. And if you truly want to change your life, stop asking what successful people have. Start asking what they repeatedly do. What do they tolerate? What do they refuse? What do they believe when things go wrong? What do they do when nobody is watching? Because success leaves clues. Not in glamour, not in appearances, not in social media highlights, in daily behavior, in standards, in consistency, in patience. And patience may be one of the most underrated forms of strength in the modern world. Everyone wants acceleration. Nobody wants cultivation. Everyone wants results. Few want development. Everyone wants the spotlight. Few are willing to spend years earning it. But nature teaches a different lesson. The tallest trees grow slowly. The strongest foundations take time. The most meaningful transformations happen beneath the surface, long before they become visible above it. And perhaps that's why your current struggle deserves more respect than you've been giving it. Because maybe this season isn't delaying you. Maybe it's preparing you. Maybe the obstacles aren't interruptions. Maybe they are instructions. Maybe the challenge you're facing right now contains a lesson that your future self will one day be grateful for. Because life has a strange way of teaching us exactly what we need, even when it arrives disguised as something we never wanted. And one day, you'll discover that some of the moments you cursed were actually building capacities you couldn't have developed any other way. The heartbreak taught empathy. The failure taught humility. The uncertainty taught faith. The loneliness taught self-reliance. The struggle taught strength. And suddenly you realize that what felt like punishment was actually preparation. What felt like loss was actually redirection. What felt like the end was quietly becoming the beginning of something larger than you could see at the time. Because sometimes life closes a door not to deny you, but to force you toward a path you would never have chosen on your own. And that's when you begin to understand that growth is not always comfortable. In fact, some of the most important transformations happen when everything familiar begins to change. When everything familiar begins to disappear, your first instinct is often fear. You wonder what's happening. You wonder why life feels unstable. You wonder why the things you once depended on no longer fit. But transformation has always required disruption. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly by improving its old life. It becomes a butterfly by completely outgrowing it. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe life is asking you to outgrow something. An old belief, an old habit, an old fear, an old version of yourself. Not because you were wrong for being that person, but because that version of you cannot carry where you're meant to go next. Every new level demands a new mindset. Every bigger dream demands a stronger identity. Every greater purpose demands greater responsibility. And that's the part people often overlook. Success is not just about gaining more. It's about becoming more. More disciplined, more resilient, more focused, more courageous, more intentional. Because opportunities don't change lives. Prepared people do. Read that again in your heart. Opportunities don't change lives. Prepared people do. Two people can stand before the same opportunity. One sees possibility. The other sees risk. One takes action. The other hesitates. One grows. The other stays where they are. The opportunity was identical. The difference was internal. And that's why your greatest investment will never be in a business, a strategy, a market, a trend. Your greatest investment will always be in yourself, in your mind, in your habits, in your standards, in your character. Because nobody can rise permanently above the person they believe themselves to be. Your identity sets the ceiling. If you believe you're weak, you'll act weak. If you believe you're incapable, you'll act incapable. If you believe your past determines your future, you'll continue reliving old chapters. But the moment you change what you believe about yourself, everything begins to shift. Not overnight, not magically, but powerfully. Because your actions eventually follow your beliefs. And your life eventually follows your actions. That's why the battle has never been out there. It has always been in here, inside your mind, inside your choices, inside the conversations you have with yourself when nobody else can hear. Think about how many people spend their lives waiting for permission. Permission to dream bigger, permission to start, permission to speak, permission to lead. permission to believe in themselves. But what if nobody is coming? What if the permission you've been waiting for is yours to give? What if today is enough? What if you are enough? Not perfect, not finished, not flawless, enough. Enough to begin, enough to learn, enough to grow, enough to take the next step, because nobody starts as the finished version of themselves. Every master was once a beginner. Every leader was once uncertain. Every champion was once overlooked. Every success story was once a person struggling to believe they could become more. The difference is, they started anyway. They moved anyway. They acted anyway. They trusted the process anyway. And eventually, the person they became was shaped by the courage they showed before they felt ready. That's your challenge today. Not to wait, not to wish, not to wonder, but to decide. Decide that your future deserves more than your excuses. Decide that your dreams deserve more than your doubts. Decide that your potential deserves more than your fear. Because there is a version of you waiting on the other side of this decision. A stronger version, a wiser version, a more disciplined version, a more confident version, a version that already exists in possibility, waiting for your actions to bring it to life. And years from now, you will either thank yourself for what you did today or wish you had started sooner. The choice is being made right now, in this moment, not in some distant future. Now, the next chapter of your life does not begin when conditions are perfect. It begins when you make a commitment so strong that excuses lose their power, a commitment so clear that fear no longer controls the direction of your life. A commitment so deep that setbacks become lessons instead of stopping points. Because listen to me carefully. You are stronger than your excuses. You are bigger than your fears. You are more capable than your doubts. You have survived days you thought would break you. You have carried burdens that others never saw. You have endured battles that taught you resilience. And if you made it through all of that, what makes you think you cannot handle what comes next? The same strength that carried you through your darkest moments still lives inside you. The same courage that helped you survive is available to you right now. The same potential that has been whispering to you for years is still waiting for your decision, waiting for your commitment, waiting for your belief. So stop underestimating yourself. Stop shrinking your dreams to match your current circumstances. Stop measuring your future by your past. Your past is a lesson, not a life sentence. Your setbacks are experiences, not your identity. Your fears are signals, not commands. And your future is not something that happens to you. It is something you build. One choice, one action, one day at a time. So when you leave here today, leave differently, walk differently, think differently, speak differently, stand differently. Carry yourself like someone who understands their value. Carry yourself like someone who refuses to quit. Carry yourself like someone who knows that greatness is not reserved for a lucky few. It belongs to those willing to earn it, to those willing to grow through discomfort, to those willing to keep going when others stop, to those willing to believe when evidence is scarce, to those willing to rise one more time than they fall. And when the doubts return, and they will, remember this. You do not need to see the entire staircase. You only need the courage to take the next step. When fear appears, move anyway. When uncertainty appears, move anyway. When obstacles appear, move anyway. Because momentum belongs to those who continue, and every step forward sends a message to your mind. I am not stopping. Every challenge overcome sends a message to your spirit. I am becoming stronger. Every day of discipline sends a message to your future. I am coming. So rise. Rise above the excuses. Rise above the limitations. Rise above the fears that have held you back for too long. Rise above the version of yourself that no longer serves your future. And step into the person you were always capable of becoming. Because the world does not need another person hiding their gifts. The world does not need another dream left unfinished. The world does not need another life controlled by fear. The world needs you at your highest level, your strongest level, your most courageous level, your most authentic level. This is your time. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Take the risk. Make the call. Start the project. Build the dream. Have the conversation. Face the challenge. Trust yourself. And remember this final truth. The hard truth about success is that it demands everything from you. But once you give it everything, it gives you something far greater in return. Not just achievement, not just recognition, not just results. It gives you proof. Proof that you were capable all along. Proof that your limits were never as small as you believed. Proof that the strongest, wisest, most powerful version of yourself was waiting on the other side of courage. And from this day forward, let that truth guide every step you take. You are not here to merely exist. You are here to grow, to rise, to lead, to overcome, to become. Now go forward with courage in your heart, discipline in your actions, faith in your future, and fire in your soul. The next chapter of your life is waiting, and it belongs to the person who refuses to give up.